I'm a Peace Corps Master's International Student in Environmental Engineering. And I served in Peace Corps from 2009 until 2011 in Suriname.
And my name is Laura Roberts, a mechanical engineering grad student, and I also served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Suriname, but from 2008 to 2000.
Today we're going to be talking about some of the work Laura and I were lucky enough to contribute to, working with UNICEF in Suriname. They participatory approach methods aimed at increasing ownership and commitment on behalf of the communities, specifically designed for Suriname by UNICEF.
Okay, so the first question you might want to have answered is, where exactly is Suriname? So Suriname is located in South America, where that little arrow is. It's actually the smallest independent country in South America. It's about 2/3 the size of Michigan, but a lot less densely populated. And it was actually a former Dutch colony. So just north of the equator, so there's a lot of rainforest. Here's some pictures just to get you an idea of what it looks like there. Some of the important kind of characteristics and distinctive characteristics of Suriname, it has to do with this population distribution. If you look up in this northern coastal region, I thought I would be able to reach, but I can't. It's much more densely populated. You have actually about 65% of the population just in the capital city. And the population there is very diverse. You have a lot of different ethnicities. You have Hindustani, Chinese, Creole, a pretty big mix. Now, if we're looking at this actually much larger area, green area down here, and this is what we're going to call the interior region today, go ahead. You only have about 6.5% of the population in this region. And this population is made up of formerly escaped African descendants of escaped African slaves, who are called Maroons, and also indigenous people. So what we're going to be talking about today is a lot of this development work is done by people in the coastal regions and is done in the interior regions. And historically, there has been not much input or participation by those in the interior when we're working on this study. Okay, so we looked at only about 6.5% of the population. So you may wonder, why are we kind of bothering concentrating our efforts on only 6.5% of the population in this development work? So one of the main reasons for this is there's great disparities in the water and sanitation between the urban regions and the interior. So if we're looking at access to clean drinking water, urban areas have about 93% have access to clean drinking water. If you look at the interior, it's down to about 20%. Likewise, if you look at sanitation, urban areas almost have 100% access, and interior only has about 30%. So another motivation for this project by UNICEF, it's kind of stated by the IDB, who talks about reasons that the water supply is not very good in the interior regions of Suriname. And they note that things could be improved with increased participation from communities, and also just having more appropriate technologies that are more appropriate based on the skill level of communities and also just the resources available.
Okay, so as Laura said, the IDB cited participation from communities being a reason for failures of implemented water systems in the interior. And a big problem with development projects is, not a problem, but a challenge is that to do it properly and properly engage the community, it takes a lot of time. To do development work in the community, to be present during implementation, supporting and monitoring how that process goes. In Suriname, many of the communities in that interior region are only accessible by boat and plane. And then the ones that are accessible by road are often located along roads like the one in that picture on the left-hand side of the screen. So travel can be really challenging and also incredibly expensive if you have field workers going back and forth. So a conclusion you could draw is that there hasn't been adequate participation by the communities due to this challenge by the agencies working in Suriname. That they aren't going out enough in advance and spending enough time with the communities to get their input and make the design based on their needs and their capacity. So the Peace Corps volunteers in this case are an incredible, valuable asset in a project. They're not only present in the communities because they live there, so they can be on the ground if you need data collection or supporting a community member, but they also know the language, which very few people know. The national language is Dutch, but within the interior, there's a lot of the traditional language spoken. And then have a deep understanding of the language, or the culture and community dynamics. So UNICEF decided to partner with Peace Corps very closely on this project, and that's how Laura and I were able to become involved. So the first thing they did was they did a survey of 28 Peace Corps volunteer villages, communities with Peace Corps volunteers living there. And this survey was just to assess the water and sanitation situation in those communities. And of those 28, 57% had had water systems installed by private organizations, public ministries, but unfortunately 75% of those installed systems were no longer operating. So the conclusion we can draw is that there's not a lack of resources going out to the interior, there's another reason for the failure. And as the IDB said, they're speculating that participation by the communities is the reason for that. So of the 28, only 4 of the villages had consistently operating water systems, which is 15% of the Peace Corps villages, which coincides with the statistic Laura shared of 20% of the villages having access to safe drinking water. So that's good, because then these villages are representative of the national statistic, the Peace Corps villages for the UNICEF project. So UNICEF, their conclusion was that the survey verified this need for increased sense of ownership on behalf of the communities and these projects. So without their ownership and their commitment, it's likely to fail. So they wanted to develop and test a new approach for engaging interior communities and addressing their water, sanitation, and hygiene challenges. And kind of we'll talk about it, but formalize it and standardize it to hopefully help projects. PCV is Peace Corps Volunteer. Peace Corps volunteer communities would serve as the pilot communities for this new approach. Okay, so there's a lot of methodologies out there for participatory approach working with communities. UNICEF focused on 2. The participatory hygiene and sanitation transformation, FAST, as the name would imply, is for it's specifically for sanitation and hygiene. It's really if you could describe it very succinctly, it aims at identifying problems within the community about how their actions can prevent and also spread illness, and then helping guide them to figuring out how they can block those spreads and change their behaviors. So it's very specific towards sanitation and hygiene. Whereas the other technique that UNICEF looked at is the Community Life Accomplishment Process, the CLCP, which is much more general. The cornerstone of the CLCP is that they focus on the collective vision. Every group has a collective vision or a collective goal that they can come to, and then work towards improvement and reaching that goal together. And so their tools are really aimed at nurturing and fostering that process of getting a group to a collective goal. What these 2 processes share is that they aim to empower people for changing their lifestyle or behavior for improvement. And they also both use tools that can be used by a variety of people with varying degrees of education. So if people can't read or write, most of the tools rely heavily on pictures, so that people in the community that maybe don't often get their voices heard can participate in the process. So UNICEF wanted to take the 2 parts of this. They felt like these were 2 of the strongest methodologies applicable to Suriname, and so they wanted to combine them and come up with a unique approach for Suriname. So the project structure was it would be a 2-year program, and that the goal is for each community in the program to develop a community action plan, detailing out what their goals are and who's going to accomplish what, and help guide them in that process. And there would be 6 months in the project for that phase. And then the remaining 18 months would be dedicated to helping them implement and monitor how that process is going. And at the end of the 2 years, the hope is that this approach would be able to be standardized and formalized based on the lessons learned, and then be made available to other agencies working in Suriname.
Okay, so what are we going to do in our actual afternoon session? We're going to go ahead and talk about UNICEF's actual process, UNICEF's actual program that they use a little bit. But for the main portion of it, we're actually going to have some sample activities to kind of give people a more concrete idea of this fairly, that's not the word, abstract is the word I was looking for, thank you. This fairly abstract concept of participatory methods. We hope to be able to show when it's useful, how it's used, and we'd love to see you guys